I'm not sure if we're live yet. We're still going live. Craig beat it. I think that got on the broadcast. Welcome to the Yang Hang Roundtable. It is 2:21 Sunday, March 21st, 2020. I have Feiku. Good to see you again. You were out for a bit. Refluence. Sorry. And Kaizen is here, though not on camera. Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday.
Yo.
Hi.
How's everybody doing?
Happy first day of the week.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I've been in and out because I've been going down to Houston a lot and going to Dallas and basically trying to do things that I can't do in my town. So like once a month I have to get out there, get my Asian groceries and stuff. Um, but when I get back, it's really great to be able to hang out with everybody again. It's hard to do it when I'm away on a trip. But this time, on my way down to Houston, I believe I caught something. So I'm a little
Yep.
bit concerned because Zephyr and I both have a little bit of dizziness. And if it was like just one of us, we'd be like, maybe you just, we're spinning too hard on the playground. We just lay down for a minute. And of course, he's fine now. He's 7 and he's recovered immediately. But I'm still feeling dizzy. So 3 days later, I'm like, maybe this is, this is definitely something. We caught something. So.
I'm sorry to hear that. I really hope that you're getting all the nutritional and rest support that you need so that you can not get sick or get better.
Right. And like immediately if you catch any little cold or any type of thing now, you're this coronavirus, and you're like Googling, is dizziness one of the symptoms or so
dizziness will be for anything. People will get dizzy whenever they have any malady, so it's going to be a dead end.
Right. And you can't really tell because there's so many now,
Yeah.
so many different symptoms that people have reported in different.
Yeah. When you're
there's
relying on
different strains.
self-reporting, forget it.
Yep.
Hard to tell. Mhm. So I know that we have a lot of stress happening for many of us on the roundtable. And so sometimes you'll just see fewer of us show up. Sometimes because we are traveling, sometimes because of being homeless, moving from one place to another. Some of us are experiencing super stress because of having to do more caregiving during this time. And so, the people who are able to make it will come and continue the show on those days.
Yes, ma'am.
Refluence, you're one of those people who are able to hold it together a little better these days. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm still unemployed. I'm still looking for a job and stuff like that. So
Sounds kind of
Yeah.
stressful too. Those sound like very stressful situations to have to go through.
Yeah, I'm taking it slowly. I'm the type of person that takes my time doing anything. So I'm trying my best to stick it through.
Yours sounds like a more kind of a chronic stressful situation that just takes a long time to figure out how to get out of that. Mm-hmm.
That's the type of situation.
It's not as acute as some of the things that are happening to us. Some of us are experiencing legal troubles and
Right.
yeah. Like for me, one of the things that I was really concerned about this week because of all the recent events is the what we call maybe Asian hate or the racial, violence that's been happening. Um, and I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about that today.
Yep, I think it's the product of the Trump administration. I mean, my cousin. I mentioned it to my cousin the other day, and then I was thinking like it's some kind of cycle between like the news. The news have like different topics every so often, and it feels like there's a sort of rhythm to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what you guys think.
I think that is true. There is sort of a rhythm to news cycles, to what is pushed as the top story of the day and what might have been happening, much longer and not been highlighted.
Right. and I don't want to be against Asian hate, but I mean, wait, what am I saying? Uh, I don't hate
I think
Asian
you are
people.
against, yeah, you're against Asian hate, but you're for
Right,
Asians.
I'm for Asians, but I know people die every day, and I know lives can't be taken for granted, and life is precious. But this happens almost every day, and why can't the news cycles like report a death like anywhere? Like why don't they? I mean, that would be sad news, but it has to happen somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like
Do you do you feel, are you ethnically Asian? Would you consider it that?
yeah, I'm Filipino, so that's Asian.
And you consider yourself ethnically Asian as a Filipino? Yeah.
Yeah, so um, it's I
'Cause
feel kind of sad about it.
Asian is a very, very large group. We have
Right.
Asians who are very dark skinned and very light skinned. We have Asians who have so many different types of religious beliefs. Do you have a religious, do you
Yeah.
belong to a religious group? Hmm.
Uh, I'm mostly Christian, and I used to be agnostic before I went to church, but I was born Catholic and stuff like that, and we did the usual going to church on Sundays and praying the rosary kind of deal. So
Can
uh,
you
Yeah, I mean, when we
can you
start
help me
any topic, yeah, hmm
can you help me
go ahead.
understand the difference between Asian and Pacific Islander? I mean, is it really just the matter of if you were born and raised on the island, then you're considered Pacific Islander, and if you were born on the mainland, you're considered Asian?
well, Pacific Islander is more focused towards like people born from Micronesia, the area around there. Micronesia, is it Malaysia?
Yeah,
I don't
like
think that's
Taiwanese people live on an
yeah,
island, but we don't consider ourselves Pacific Islanders.
yeah.
It's almost it's a lot of this is racial within the Asian group. We talk about Asian as being some sort of a cohesive, unit in the United States because we have so many other, we have much darker people maybe from Africa and maybe much lighter people. I don't know, but not really, because Asian covers all the entire, you know, group of
Asia
black,
continent,
brown.
right?
Yeah,
Well, and
every color you have is in us. Yeah.
this is where in my interactions with the international community, like on college campuses, because I've
Mhm.
always been for whatever reason, usually because of my age, kind of more mixed in with the foreign student population than with the traditional student population, right?
Mhm.
So in all of those interactions, like as Americans, because we're not terribly well educated about geography or culture or history on anywhere other than the Western civilized world, we forget that Asia includes all of India, it includes Russia, it includes the Ukraine and many of the Slavic countries.
Mhm.
So it encompasses so many different ethnic and cultural groups that like we've lost count, just like we've lost count on how many Native American cultures we've lost since Westerners came to the North American and South American continents. Like we're still learning that there are tribes in the Amazon that have never had contact with Westerners before or white skinned people. So I think that it's a kind of a reflection of all the history that we've wiped away in this Western civilized, and I'm saying civilized with quotes, right? This Western civilized culture that's all fucking guns and swords and warfare and oh, you're different than me. Well, I'm better than you, and I'm gonna erase you if you don't assimilate to my way of being. And this is one of the
Yeah.
challenges has always been for me as a faith, as a spiritual person who's only, in the past couple of years attached myself to a particular faith or orthodoxy, which is the non-orthodoxy of Quakerism. And 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 battling this idea that Christianity itself demands that you assimilate or die. And
Well,
in no
yeah, so
in
that
no place is that truly Christ's message in the books. That's a lot of very Middle Eastern attitude that came directly from the tribal people of a specific place in a specific time. And so the question becomes, how can we apply those experiences to what we're experiencing today so that, at least as from a Christian perspective, embody what Christ brought to us and share that with the world? That's evangelism, without erasing anybody. Like, that was a whole goal. And you can read it very clearly in Paul's letters to the Corinthians and other people.
That's definitely relevant because Kai and I have been having a little Twitter chat about what motivated the shooter this week. So there's two major incidents that have been on the news a lot, and has really created this call for unity, not just among Asian people in the United States, not just Asian Americans, but with calls to allies to help us. And so the allies are showing up from every group. White Americans, Hispanic Americans, Black Americans, and these are all super groups of peoples who used to be tribal against each other, who are not unified in Africa, with each other, who are not unified in Asia with each other. But in America, we're calling for these super groups to become unified into these,
Can you imagine an outside group? An outside
amalgamations.
Group viewing us as Americans and being like, yeah, Americans get along.
And then here we are in here, we're
backstabbing
each other and fighting each other. But yeah, it's like, there's a call for unity right now because of a couple of events that have really current events. And so, someone listening to this even 3 months from now may not remember what those events are. So just to document what's going on in this specific time and place, we have a shooter, a young man in Atlanta, I believe, shot 8 people dead, or maybe one of them is still alive. And then, but he's wanted for their murders, basically. And, they've arrested him. His justification for these murders was he had a sexual addiction and that he was trying to remove the temptation of these Asian women, right? Without mentioning Asian, but 6 of the women were massage parlor workers who were Asian. And so this became an issue because, the murders are awful in themselves. But then for the police to just sort of take his statement at face value and then just say, okay, well, this is not a hate crime because race is not mentioned specifically in his, motivations. But when you look at the victims, it's like, Asian Americans are like, no, this was a hate crime because he targeted. I mean, he didn't go uptown and target some, massage
Random,
in a day spa where they have Swedish women who could tempt you with their, luscious bodies or whatever it is. Fetishize some Asian women.
Does that exist?
Who are about my age. These are not like the usual young whatever.
I've never heard of an uptown Swedish massage parlor in my life.
They're called day spas in the nice area.
I thought those were just
They're not
legit
called a
spas.
massage parlor.
I did not know. Okay, well there we go.
Well, you can have them in a. What about health? What about your athletics or your athletic? They have women doing massage. They have women doing massage in the back rooms of all over the place.
Yeah. The world of secret prostitution is a mystery to me.
Well, I don't know that these women were prostitutes. I mean, we're assuming that they are because of what he said.
That's what we're implying when you say he could have gone to an uptown Swedish massage because he's a sex addict, right? He's trying to remove the object of sexual desire. So,
but see, the massage therapist or a massage person is not necessarily a sex worker. But if you have an expectation,
they're not supposed to be at all. Is the thing,
right? People have an expectation of something,
right,
that they think is going to happen if the lady is Asian.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that a reasonable expectation? And even if it were, it was like, are you not the one requesting it? It's like it doesn't make any sense to externalize your own problems onto somebody else
Right. So it's
who is
unfair.
probably just poor and needs a lot of money to support their own families. These are women who are my age, so I'm assuming they probably have families.
Of course.
And I just
Right.
You don't do that for no reason.
Anyway, the second event, so Kai and I were talking about the motivations as being possibly related to the way that he misinterprets his faith, because he felt that he was sinning, and then then he was going to shoot the devil that was tempting him,
Right.
and somehow
the
it was
real
incarnation
sort of
of
missing
the
the
devil was these
humanity of all
women.
the other people in the equation. When you think about it that
Yeah,
way,
like
right?
they're
That's
not
the
real
issue.
people.
Right.
Somehow.
The math doesn't work. No, I mean, yeah, not to even like. I don't mean to be disrespectful in talking about this like pithily. It's just, it's hard not to be jaded. This just increasingly disgusting things happening every day in this evil country. What do you do? It's terrible.
Well, before I move on to the
I
second
think what you
incident, and we can
do
talk
is
about
do
both.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
what
go ahead.
Viz is doing, which is say, hey, I've got a project and anybody's welcome. And what Heidi in Hawaii has said is come down, participate in intentional living with other people that share our values. We all started
These
out
are
Yang Gang because of
Yeah, these are
humanity
two
first
famous
principles.
these are two famous Yang Gang sort of in our groups. So if you're listening and you're not familiar with them, Heidi is I think Vets for Yang originally on Twitter or something.
No,
No?
it's
This is not him.
Hyde Hollow, HYDE Hollow, Hawaii.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, from Hawaii, different. And then there's also Viz. I think you're talking about Viz, your aunt Viz. Is that right?
Yes, and she's running
Okay.
for office, and hopefully she'll be
Really?
our guest again
Okay.
soon. Because the last
Wow,
time we
I did
spoke
not
to
know
her, she
that.
was doing the hunger strike.
Yeah. I didn't know she's made that new decision. That's really cool.
She has, so
Okay.
for sure. And she's got this project. She's got a couple projects going on that she, I think, wants to talk about, and I think people would want to hear about.
That's awesome. So the second, well, before I move on to the second event, I think I wanted to just mention that this particular case, of course, was not an isolated incident, and is stuff like this has been happening all year. And this particular young person said he was about to go down to Florida and continue his killing spree.
Great. It's so
After
upsetting. There
he was
are
done.
people, there are women who are just really, just it could have been you. It's just terrible. It's very, very, very upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been because I actually met someone
Yeah.
who's very much like this young man, and I kept him in my life for a good long time. And he wasn't. I met him because I was doing taxi driving at the time.
Yeah.
But he also frequents massage parlors and has the same, sort of guilt afterwards that he shouldn't, and so on and so forth. And my advice to him was always, hey, what you need to do is find yourself a young person who is like yourself, who believes in the same church or whatever it is that you feel is really important in your life, a driver in your life, and has the same values type of thing. And then you could have a healthy, like what I consider more normal relationship, right? And then you wouldn't have all these difficult, uncontrollable feelings or motivations that you
Yeah.
can't seem to get rid of. I'm like, why don't we get you
Well,
in a healthy place?
Did
I
they?
could never get
Right.
him to. I never could get him to change that. Yeah.
I would presume that the reason he frequents massage parlors is because he doesn't think that he has the capability to have a healthy relationship, although he'd probably prefer one. I mean, that's a presumption I'm making based on, anyone I know who sort of has any kind of behavior or thinking that's in that milieu, It usually it comes from a place of like very, very low self-esteem and feelings of inadequacy, and perhaps they probably have tried and failed to have relationships and just feel it's not going to be possible for them.
Well, but this is connected then to a deeper underlying issue that's been going on in this country now for solidly the last 30 years, which is a push against sex education of any form.
Mhm.
And so if people are in an isolated, especially like an isolated faith-based community, or even just, living out here in the Midwest, because this is it's a very monotheistic culture out here. It's a very monochromatic culture, even for the people who aren't monochromatic. And so, like, if the only exposure you're getting is free porn on the internet to actual human sexuality, it completely distorts what a healthy, normal, adult sexual relationship looks like. And then on the other hand, so we have porn on one hand, which absolutely fetishizes Asian women in particular in very disgusting and horrific way. Like, it's the ugliest stuff I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of ugly stuff in real life.
Well, I mean, one of the things that a lot of people who are not into the politics, and we don't do a lot of, talking about these things, but I felt that it was this week, I really felt almost, I wanted to challenge people almost. I wanted to provoke people who live in very happy, sort of as long as they keep to themselves, they don't even need to know what's happening in the world because their life
Right.
is good right now. So if their life is good, they don't need to be thinking about all these things. So I almost wanted to provoke people who were in their bubbles to say, hey, take a look at what's happening. Can you speak up for Asian Americans right now? But anyway, when I bring up these, when I say, hey, this is what happened this week, the first response I'll get is, well, this is sin inside the hearts of people.
What?
It's just a human,
What's the relevance
So
of that?
first it's, well, I mean, yeah, it is something. Well, I guess the point is that, to me, that's kind of a little bit whitewashed. And I love this friend of
Yeah.
mine dearly. She's wonderful. She's like the most angelic person I have ever met. She really is like the embodiment of goodness. But it was sort of a failure to acknowledge that there's really
Yeah.
something specific happening here. It's not even just women. Like women really are, trashed even in porn. I mean, the porn is trashing women, all kinds of women, not just Asian women, like Kai was mentioning. It's a woman issue. But it's also specifically an Asian woman issue that's going on here. And the racial that, that the fact that he would pick specifically target, the Asian massage parlor as being the lowest, the worst place to work probably, as a massage person. And then, to be targeted by violent
Yeah.
people.
Of all
It's like,
those people are suffering so much already.
Well, but but it was deliberate. It was deliberate. It was in the rhetoric. It's been in the rhetoric all along about COVID. People are already angry about that, and they already want to blame China for that. When we don't really know, we know that whatever this virus is definitely had some sort of relationship to the wildlife right there. But we're
but they
in such a
still
big
want
global
to,
economy. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing.
well,
It's
I mean,
it's it's a
they may hate China, but they still want to have sex with a Chinese woman, apparently. I mean, it's just like, I'm like not understanding, like,
Yeah.
if Chinese people have the pandemic, then you should maybe stay away from them. It just makes no sense.
Well, but I mean, but these are, I mean, I think ultimately for me, these are the deep spiritual issues that everybody is facing in this environment right now. And I hopped on a thread earlier this week. Stop. Oh,
What?
hold on a second. I've got an
You're being
audio
pawed
problem.
at by an animal? Oh.
Okay, we can hear you okay,
Yeah.
from here.
I am
It's just distracting me.
Yeah.
Yes, something is bothering you. Okay, on that
Okay.
side. So what's specifically Asian about this? People might be wondering, right? I mean, because it could have been some other women, but just women in general. No, it was specifically Asian, not only because of who the victims were, but because of this mentality that Asian women are going to give you this thing that you want.
Hmm.
And that's the temptation, is that they're, because of their lower status in the social, their lowered social status,
Yeah.
that they will do anything in order to make that money, right? And so you're more likely to get this. So that's a temptation.
And you see how that
You
plays
know,
into
if
what I was saying, how this comes from a place of like very, very severe insecurity and like profound pain and weakness, you know? And they feel like
yeah, like
they're only
they're
comfortable.
going to be silent.
Yeah.
If you offer them money, they're going to be silent about it even if they reject you. They're
They're
not
the-
going to go to the
They're
police
like the only women
because
that he feels comfortable. He could even, force himself upon. It's that's how low they feel about themselves, you know? That's why they do
well,
that.
he may not even force himself on anyone. He may, just
Well, I mean,
say,
you know,
I
it's
offer
like
you $20.
financially,
Would you
right?
do
It's
this?
financial coercion. It's not physical, right? But I mean, they do
But-
that work because they have
Yeah.
to. It's the only work they can get. There's a coercion within the capitalist system there, you know. So, it's
But
sort
if
of,
you're in a nice, if he were in a nice like day spa sort of place, and he was paying $100,
yeah,
I don't know, 30 or 50 or whatever, he's paying extra, more. He'd actually have to respect that person more and know that there's a structure there. If he offered that person $20 for a happy ending, he might actually be, find a bouncer come and get him and offer him to show him the door and maybe get a policeman to talk to him.
Yeah.
might be a little bit more. Like that's the real issue is that Asian women are expected to be silent when something, when something is uncomfortable for them. They'll smile and say, okay, you shouldn't do that. And then let you off. And you could try it again with the next Asian woman. That's something
That's just
specifically
scary.
a little different about Asian women. And then that brings me to the other thing that happened, which is in San Francisco, a grandmother who was in her 70s, I think,
Mhm.
was attacked on the street randomly by a white man who punched her in the face. And she was so upset and that she, for anything to fight back with, she found like a wooden stick and she beat him with the wooden stick on his face. And so he got 2 black eyes and ended up on a stretcher by the time the police came. And so, I think some of us were like, wow, don't think you can attack just
I'm
anybody.
laughing, man. And I'm a pacifist, but I'm right behind her, honey. You just beat the ever living crap out of him because it's asking for it.
Well, the reason why we think it's fine for her to fight back is like it is funny in the sense that we don't think she's going to do the type of harm that he could have because we expect her to physically just not have as much, to have the full strength to fight back. But at the same time, sure, we wouldn't like to encourage people too hard, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, you can't just think that everybody is weak and just go and picking on, the weakest among us. I mean, this is the thing I wanted to know. I thought the most important question to answer really is, what kind of person would pick on an elderly lady? Who hits an old Asian lady?
That's a good question. I mean, I have
My
no
Some
idea.
answer
people
was a
would-
weak ass white boy. Weak.
I mean,
Weak.
you're not
Hey,
proving
you know
any
what?
superiority.
Come-
You pick the
is
weakest
where
person and pick on them.
This is where, and again, from the pacifist, come pick on me, boy. Leave that
Right,
old lady
see what happens.
alone.
Right.
Pick on somebody your own race, for Christ's sake. What's she
Or
have
just
to do with anything?
don't pick on anyone at all, ideally.
Ideally, yeah. But I don't know.
You know, Yang did write about this in the War on Normal People that, and rightfully so, white men are being repositioned in our society because, yes, there are more of us. And by us, I mean women and minorities and people from different cultures. Like, that's just the fact, whether you want to like it or not. And it requires a repositioning to accommodate for the movement of humanity. So rather than feel the need to fight or flight, and mostly fight for a white dude, and it's not your fault, it's testosterone, it's the larger amount of muscle versus over women, like it's connected to our biology. I'm not going to say that it's not, but it doesn't have to be. And that's the gift of cognition, I think, is our ability to master ourselves and our environment. But we've externalized it so much, we've only focused on mastering the environment. Master the environment, triumph over the things which oppress you, that are hard for you to manage. And we've done a great job. Look at what we've built, but we haven't matched it internally. We haven't built the internal civilization
So that's
that
what
we
real
need.
discipline is. The
Yeah.
discipline is about disciplining oneself. Like when Shale says he eats one meal a day, that's real discipline. He feels that it's helping him with his health.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think of it that way as a discipline anymore. It is. It's just it's now it's my nature because I've been doing it for years, over 5 years. So
It feels natural to you now, so
Mhm.
you call it your nature.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, may need to they when something is happening in their life, they may say, "I'm going to impose some discipline to make sure I get exactly 8 hours of sleep at least every night," or something like that. Whatever it is they're doing, but it's discipline is about your internal, controlling your own uh, behavior.
hmm
Whereas a lot of people think of discipline as disciplining your wife or disciplining your child or
Well,
disciplining your,
yeah, there's this association that discipline is punishment, but the word discipline, the
Mhm.
root is about learning and teaching.
A disciple of something.
Well,
Oh yeah, I
right, which
hadn't
is
thought
a
about that.
learner.
Interesting.
And when you establish discipline, you're doing that with a student. It speaks to the heart of both learning and teaching. They're interconnected. So if we think of somebody who's a specialist, they're a specialist of their discipline, their area of study, right?
hmm
And that's to discipleship from the religious sense. It means you followed a master, you followed a teacher.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
through the following of your teacher, you have developed mastery and become the master. In the true Buddhist sense of, if you do it long enough, kid, you got it. And people are going to look to you whether you want them to or not, because you possess something they don't have. So why are we fetishizing Asian women? Because from a certain point of view, they have a discipline we don't have.
Well,
So
I think
we
it's
yearn
interesting.
for it. We
I think
don't
it's
know how to achieve
interesting,
it.
yeah. When you talk about what are the things that people fetishize, right? It's think of a fetish as something that turns you on. But in the Asian fetish, I mean, is it like, are you turned on by the slant, the eye shape? Are you turned on by what is it that's the fetish here? Is it but it feels like what's really happening is the fetish is that here's a person who's not going to say no to you because they don't have an ability to not say no.
Right.
They're gonna be, like you think of a GI going out to Vietnam, and the Asian woman's just hoping that you'll take her away from this awful place or something, you know, and or you think about what is it that makes them what is it that feeds the interest? And if you come down to it, it always ends up being, somehow her status in life. She's been taught um, to behave and to be quiet.
Well, and I think it's worth noting too that women with any part of Western descent or Western background have a certain higher status. And in the world, like, what group of women is most heavily human trafficked? As slaves, as sex workers, as manual laborers, as the housekeeper? Asian women from all over. And it's done a lot in Asia and Europe and Africa. Like, it goes back and forth. The old trade routes are human trafficking routes and always have been. Those are the routes we've waged all the wars on. And if you don't look at war as human trafficking, I don't know what planet you're living on. Like, because war costs human lives.
Yeah.
You're conscripting certain lives to be expendable, to go off to war. It's so disgusting when you think of it that way. And I just,
yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
I'm like, I can feel it on a spiritual level, like how deeply these actions this week have struck people. And it layers on top of the other things we've already experienced recently, like the attack on the Capitol, which was nothing about anything other than white supremacy and a stack of lies, which include vilifying people from China because we have a pandemic. And it's like, you're so missing the point. And how can we get you to see the point?
Well,
Because
the thing I really dislike about that, yeah, once we get into the politics, the thing I really dislike about what's happening is people are saying in the United States, well, we love Chinese people. We even fetishize their women. We love their women, especially, but we don't like their government. And so it's okay for us to say these horrible racist things because we're just complaining about the government. It's not the people. But, people do not have that very good divide in their hearts and minds. If you are saying the Chinese government is responsible for this, the Chinese government is this, the Chinese government is that, then again, you have created this fetish of a people who are subjugated by some headless, mindless government, right?
It's cognitive laziness, and it is a lack of discipline. It's like
the people are not strong enough. Yeah, the people, are just they're just like objects for us to go and free master. The master, the government. Who is the government? Let's think about this. Like these people are not mindless people. They're not drones. They're not minions. They're people who have just as much political power we do, which is not that much. Like in our country, we have very little. Maybe they have very little, but they're just as strong as we are. They're not, like poor little yellow brothers that don't have any Christian, moral backbone with which to support their fights and their beliefs and stuff like that. So if their government does something, I'm sorry about the bird clock in my house. But if their government is doing something, perhaps it actually represents the will of the people. Just the same way that, when Trump is doing something, he sometimes is representing the will of his, of which that we seem to see in our midst. But if we really recognize Chinese people as being strong and independent people, then no, we wouldn't be able to criticize their government and say, like the Chinese people themselves don't have any responsibility for their government. So these are just not, that's the new narrative, that we're going to criticize a government, and that's not racism because the government are not people. And it doesn't work. Then it results in all this violence.
Again, it's just pure cognitive laziness. It's people that are just consuming. And in this sense, they're just consuming ideas that come from other people and latching onto little talking points. And it's a word salad, ultimately. And this is where, as a clinician, now I probably won't get a very big group of clinicians. A few will join me in what I'm about to say. But, from the clinical perspective, most people in the world right now are not functioning. They are not functioning from a cognitive perspective. There's a lot of people who you can't have a conversation with until it jumps into the cesspool of media sound bites. I remember a time when conversations happened on front porches, and now we're doing it in 140 characters on Twitter. It's scary to watch people do this reductionist thing with themselves and do it so mindlessly. And this is where I'm going to go back to something that Faye, you and I were kind of touching on in that Twitter thread, is that if you read the New Testament through the lens of Eastern philosophy, Eastern religion, Eastern mysticism, and some of the beautiful, like, theocratic dynasties that were absolutely amazing that existed in Asia prior to Christ, or the man we attribute to be Christ.
Yeah,
and if you layer some of those stories in to what Christ brought in the New Testament, your mind starts getting blown in ways you didn't expect. But you got to have that lens.
I'd love to hear more about that at some point, because I don't know if it's appropriate in terms of our podcast, but I'd love to hear more about that from you directly, because I've had a different experience where some Korean friends who are very devout. There are a lot of very devout and giant mega churches in Korea, so they have this special phenomenon there. She told me that if you visit China, that it proves many of the things in the Bible are true. And I was like, really? China? Like, it's almost like I've never actually heard that from people here in the American.
I'd like to hear you guys both talk about that. I think it's relevant to the sort of restructuring of society that we should be doing. I know we've had some talk about what is and isn't appropriate, and we're feeling it out, but I do like a lot of the talk about society and on a grand scale and social restructuring and where the real problems lie and what we can do. So please do talk about that. I'm sorry for coming in to cut you off.
No,
but yeah.
And we're entering the holy season right now. So I think the timing is good for this too, because we just us here in the room right now represent a vast diversity of background, of experience, of culture. Yet we're all connected because we're citizens of the United States, as far as I know. Right?
Refluence, yeah. Well, Refluence lives almost halfway around the world. Feels like. What time is it for you?
9.
9?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. and it's 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So it's pretty far around the world.
3 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah, 3 o'clock for me.
Yep.
But Faye, what were you saying before I said
6
please
hours?
go on and say it? Sorry.
Well, I think this is something we may have to talk about on a different episode, because Kai and I haven't talked it through before.
Oh, okay.
And I'd love to hear more about what
I was really listening attentively.
Oh yeah,
So
the
I'd be
interesting
interested.
thing is I've never really heard Christianity here in the Americas, right here in the United States where I live. And I feel like I'm pretty well steeped in Christian culture, right? I live in it. I breathe it every day. I have so many friends who are Christian. And I've been to church. I've been to Catholic services. I've been to Christian service. I've been to so many different. But I've never heard anyone other than my Korean friend talk about China as having any sort of historical relevance, right, to the Bible. And so I was like, wow. But I never really got a chance. I might know what these things are. So we'll talk hopefully sometime. Yeah. But today we've been sort of talking about how the Asian violence, is specific to Asian women, not just the women, but, I think it's the racial aspect. I think people are unwilling to deal with. It's very uncomfortable to deal with it. So really good people, like my friend, they're going to say, well, all humans are flawed. Or some other good people may say, well, that particular person is very troubled. So just that one guy, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid dealing with the racism in our own hearts and minds, which we all have.
The problem is not individual. And
No.
It never was. It's directly associated with the levels of inequality. It is causation, not correlation, because they can reverse all the negative outcomes by giving people money. That's why UBI makes the most sense. That's it. Like, it just improves all the metrics of feeling connected to your community, feeling stable with your family, your mental health, your depression lift.
Yeah,
The heart-related diseases start to improve. Blood pressure drops. All of it. It's just across the board, and it connects directly to trauma as well, because that's the thing that keeps us going, like fucking rats on a wheel, is fear.
And I think the one metric that people are also afraid to talk about, not only we're afraid to talk about race and really address it head on, like in Yang Gang, I've noticed, well, I don't have enough friends or understanding this particular culture of, Latino culture or of Black culture or whatever. So I don't have any right to talk about it. And so I just won't talk about it, And I was like, why? Why can't we talk about it? Do you have a race that's native to you and you feel dominant culture? I don't have any, but talking
Faye,
about it is how you
Faye.
learn. Yeah.
Your mic is cutting out in and out a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm probably messing with the cord and touching the thing.
Or
I'm gonna
it
try to
sounds like
leave
you're
it alone.
just too close and you're hitting the pop screen and it's muting you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, is this
But
better?
yeah, you were saying yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Okay. So mainly my thing is like we're afraid to talk about certain things because might be we might not have enough understanding of it. But those are the things we really need to talk about. We need to have curiosity about how is this affecting you or how is this affecting me, and just kind of continue to talk about it, right? So
Right.
not only I want to talk about the racial issues, but then we've got the one thing that UBI we don't talk about enough is how it supports freedom, and we don't have a way to measure how much freedom people have. I mean, we talk about freedom, we bring it out when we want to go to, or when we want to do, like there's
Right.
the strangest times we bring out freedom, like we don't want to wear a mask. It's like, but that's a public health. Is that really related to freedom? Freedom is not about not want to do in that way. Freedom is about whether or not you can make choices, freely. And I think the Asian fetish specifically, is that the one thing that ties together all these disparate Asian people is they don't have sufficient freedom, whether it's from an oppressive government or whether it's because they don't have social status here in the United States where they're not dominant. The fetish is they don't have freedom. And so if you provide everybody with you, it just it changes things so much, because that is freedom money. And I feel like this is how we can get to our next topic of the day, which is to ask Kai about, how she hasn't been supported fully in her freedom, in her fight to be with her family. Do you feel comfortable talking about that, Kai?
I do. I had to
Okay.
relocate myself to where my cigarettes are and kind of out of the kids, because I've been a domestic victim of domestic violence now 11 years, coming in April when we first met. So I met my ex at a poetry event, and I at the time hadn't come to where I'm at spiritually yet, so fixated on the material. Very tall, lanky guy. I really like extraordinarily tall men. He measures about 6'8", just a little shy of that, right? And so I met my kind of mind's fetish of what was attractive to me. A little bit
Are
of a
you a tall
ginger.
woman, Kai? Because I've never stood next to you.
Taller than average. I'm about 5'8", a little shorter than that. I'm shrinking. the leg injury might have taken a half an inch or more. I don't know yet because I still don't have full extension on my leg. But so but what led into so I met him in April at a poetry event. He's very strange. He's a poet. We met at a poetry event. Were there drugs involved? There were. Somebody was using drugs. It might have been me. There might have been acid. There might have been other things going around. I don't even remember because it was 11 years ago. And so much has happened since, stuff that I've had to forget in order to parent my children alongside this man who abused me. So we met at a poetry event. We had a follow-up date a few days later. I had another date with a guy, which he walked in on, which should have been it. That should have been the end of things. Him interrupting my date with somebody else, not okay behavior. I'm not available. Don't stop by. Please do something else with your time this evening. I have an obligation.
Were you already separated at that point?
Well, no, that's when we were dating. That's like the first
Oh,
3 weeks of the relationship. He walks in and ruins a date.
oh, so you were not dating exclusively, but he decided to walk in on you trying to have a
Do you
date with
date
someone
somebody
else.
exclusively, somebody that you've known for like 2 weeks? I don't know. I didn't then. I was in my late 30s.
Mhm.
Oh,
No, I mean,
yeah,
that's a
I'm free on
decision to move
Thursday.
forward.
Like we weren't
Yeah. Mhm.
even like there was hardly any relationship there at all. And I didn't recognize the pattern because I was in a vulnerable position emotionally. And that's
Yeah.
what it takes when you're in an abusive situation, is that the victim needs to be vulnerable in some way. Because if you're not vulnerable and you're an independent woman, you're not going to be easy prey. You're going to have very clear boundaries and be able to keep them. So this is where I had, because of my own background, because of my physical limitation, that exact an incredible toll on me physically. Like my medical issues are so bad sometimes. There was about 3 years that I couldn't be upright for more than about 18 hours a week. And when I say upright, I mean standing. So this is where I relate to what Izzy's saying. What happens when there's no floor to stand on? Well, if you're disabled, but you're not 100% disabled forever and always, amen, then you're going to live in poverty. And this is what your poverty is going to look like. You're going to be connected to people that will predate on you, will victimize you, and will use you for whatever they think you're here for them.
Hi, you never met I think someone named Sherry who had been on our show also. And she was also taken advantage of because she has a disability. And we just meet so many people on our show who have that exact same experience of, the thing that like I was talking about, the Asian fetish is really that she has no status, and so therefore you can take advantage of her. If somebody is disabled in some way, then you can take advantage of that. And it's just all about, every type of woman that is it's always you're looking at, well, is she very young? Because young people are easy to, influence and take advantage of. Is she, of this type, or is she of that type? There's a whole that, sort of, this is the perfect victim. The person can take advantage of these things. I wish
Say,
that,
you're starting to cut
yeah.
out again. Back off your
Oh, I'm
mic.
so sorry.
No,
Okay.
it's okay.
Yeah.
But
So,
it happens when you
yeah.
lean in real close and it shows that you're very engaged, but I want to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's because I'm fidgeting now with my cord because I'm feeling so, these topics are difficult for everyone, I think. Here, let me see, make sure I try not to be messing with that. Um, And so we've actually had a lot of people come to the show and sort of have that same represent the same sort of path down which the abuser, will start. First, they try a few things, like you're saying, that first thing when he walked in on you, and then you didn't immediately, push back and say, "No, I'm not going to take that from you," and just get rid of this person. Then
Well,
they're
it
like,
was
"Okay, how can I push it a little bit next time?" And it just gradually
well,
continues.
and it was a situation where, and because I have children, there's no doubt in my mind that I was meant to have him as my husband. On a deep spiritual level, I chose this path for these children, the same way that they chose this path to be my children in this experience of our lives. I have to believe that in order to get some ground underneath me. So for every atheist out there, yeah, you know what? It makes me feel less crazy to think this way. I'm allowed to have that. You can back off. Right?
Oh,
I'm
sure.
not
I
taking
mean,
anything away
uh,
from anybody.
yeah, no, your spiritual life, is a necessary one for most humans. It's just like saying that, most humans need to have social groups. We're creatures that need this spiritual life, and I feel that religion is important. Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many people engaging in it.
Right? Well, and this is something that I've noticed that's very interesting to me is that younger people, and by that I mean millennials, and then for sure Gen Z, are finding themselves feeling very spiritually connected, but not identifying with a religion at all. So there's this huge movement, and I see it also with the leftists, but also on the right, with the very, very right, the non-religious right, which I always used to call libertarian wingnuts, because they're the ones that stockpile all the weapons in their basement and cover everything with aluminum foil and think that that somehow makes them safe from the government that has drones. You know, it's not reasonable, but that's where they're at. And there's no God in their life. They're not doing it for God. In fact, they're the ones that preach separation of church and state, which I also support. That's a Quaker principle right there, which is why Quakers don't swear on the Bible or anything else. We don't swear oaths. I had to write a written statement when I took my job at the census because I don't swear. I don't swear an oath to anything. I answer to God.
Well, I would say that, good government can be a really wonderful thing, and bad government can really be harmful. And I would say religion is similar. It's very easy to do it
Yep.
poorly. You can do a good job or you can do a bad job. So it's kind of the same. It can be very, very helpful to people when
I very much
you
appreciate
lean
the
on it.
rise in secular humanism. Yeah, I think it's a very good thing. Humans can fix human problems that humans created and not have any part of God in it. Although it makes it so much easier when God is at the base. But that's for you to decide. That's not for the government to decide. That's not for some man at a pulpit to decide, in my opinion. It's for you
Yeah.
to decide. And so this is where I say anyone with any kind of spiritual root needs to understand that our arguments for a universal basic income speak directly to those principles that God gave us everything we needed. It is the abundance versus scarcity mindset. And that's the root of
Absolutely.
how we
Yeah.
take steps forward for social justice so that we stop fetishizing Asian women who we see as helpless and vulnerable all the time, because on average, much smaller, certainly smaller than most white men, and that it's not okay. It's not okay to use coercive violence on anybody. it's not okay to tell her that the only way that she can make a living is to give people happy endings in a massage parlor, when what she really wants to do is sew clothes for little babies. I don't know, whatever she wants. Where's her
Well, it's a
freedom?
fetishizing of the helplessness, the aspect of it. That whole not being able to fight back and being powerless to do something. That's happening that's why it connects to all these different other aspects. Being a woman, being a child, being the one that is less powerful because you're a minority or whatever. That's the fetish that's really scary. And it's happening across every type of abuse comes from the sort of taking advantage of an inequitable power structures. So we want to try to build a society that is more equal to everyone, and the universal basic income is definitely a very special value that has been taken up by spiritual leaders in our country.
Well, it's
um,
rooted in spiritual principles. I mean,
mhm,
and and to me, like, it's all the world religions teach it.
mhm.
We have a lot of trouble practicing it. And in our conversation about, if you want to, the danger with Satan is that most people don't know what the word means. And it goes back to a Hebrew word that the Satan itself was not related to the Hebrew word that's used in those passages where we talk of Satan. And Satan means to oppose, to be opposed to be the adversary against. And so really, when we talk about Satan in the Bible, we're talking about those things which make it hard for us to follow the path that God put in front of us to do. And again, that's for you to decide. I don't know what your path is. I feel very fortunate that we in this group, our paths have intersected because they strengthen me in my path and what I have to do.
There's
And as
a
much as it might be risky for me to be on this podcast and say anything at all about courts or systems, I'm going to do it because it's unjust, because it's not following its own rules and hasn't for people like me ever. Like, we're not there yet. It's still happening. We're still victimizing victims and blaming them for their victimhood, and then saying the people that victimize us are having a bad day, and so we should just lay down and take it.
Right.
So in
Yikes.
this case, you've got when you say you were abused, you were probably referring to his treading over your boundary, and so there was sort of a physical abuse that happened to you. But
Yes.
then it proceeded later into probably emotional.
It
And
it started
Mhm.
out on all of those levels pretty much immediately. And I was searching for meaning. I was searching for a message. I was searching for my moment of testimony. I've always been searching for that. By definition, that's part of what makes me a Quaker. I'm not going to believe until I have the experience, until I know what God wants me to know. So I had that moment of testimony about 2 years ago. And that's what's brought me to today, and my ability to identify what has been going on in my life since I've met this man, and to connect all the dots that lead directly to, no, this man abuses women. He abuses me. He abused his ex-wife and their children. They were able to get out. I haven't been able to get out because I married him and was
and
married to him when our children were born. And it's about
this is where
property rights.
this is where I was going with the fact that you had multiple different levels of abuse. Not only you had those, but then it moves into the financial. Were you financially abused at some point?
I've been financially abused since we married. and I had a job teaching GED at the community college. It was going okay outside of my, like, whatever, my internal angst and ennui, right? That I'm like crippled. I'm in a grieving process. I'm emotionally vulnerable. My body's a mess. Like, shit's going on internally with me. That's what made me vulnerable. And he just hit it. He stalked me. I didn't know he was stalking me, but he stalked me. He kept popping up places. And I thought, oh, and he's saying to me, you're my gift from God. You're the woman I've been looking for. And he's
Well, that
full
seems like
on
the wrong way to use God or religion in
Well,
any way
yeah.
to
And
say you're the one. Yeah.
in DV, you talk about spiritual abuse and how often that is used as a tool to keep victims with their abusers and not gain independence and not have any freedom.
And
So
then finally,
even though
it-
I have
Mhm.
piles of paper of police reports of times that I called for help and didn't get it, to the point of documenting the days I fully broke down and lost my mind. Okay. And they're in a stack of papers that no court's ever seen. And I'm probably never going to be able to admit to a court at this point because it's already been adjudicated. You don't get to present new evidence about anything. That's how it works.
Oh, I know.
Those rules were written by men.
Yeah, the rules
And
are the court the judge is the fact finder. And so if in any court case the judge makes a decision, whatever the judge decided, if she makes you sound like a slut, she makes you sound like you were not a good parent, she says anything in there, that becomes the new fact. And the only way to change that fact is to go back to that court case and fight it all over again. You can't do it in a new court because, oh, that fact is done. We're done making that fact. And whether or not it's true about you doesn't matter. It's, the judge could have made a mistake. The judge could have had a bad day. The judge could just be someone who allowed. But she says, this
back
is
off
the new
your mic.
fact. Oh, okay.
Back
Sorry.
off your mic.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So,
You just can't lean in so close.
okay. But, I'm sorry. I'm sitting in a funny position. I think the really interesting thing to me is that none of this could have really happened if society as a whole did not create a legal system that backs him up. We back up the abusers and allow that take advantage of the underrepresented, of the disabled, of the young, of people. We've created these power structures that are being instead of being justice is blind or whatever, as if that were impartial. It's not impartial. The entire justice system is built to basically uphold the power structures that we've created.
Well, I mean, like our current justice system in civil courts is still based on British common law. That's it. That's the problem. That system itself is sexist and racist to its core.
And so it hasn't really, whatever the power structure is now, whatever gives you, allows you to escape financial oppression, whatever gives you more experience or energy. There are certain things that the state cannot remedy. The state cannot actually help you to find self-confidence in certain things, but we can make sure everybody has enough money. We can make sure that everybody has shelter and medical care. I mean, the things that we can do as humans to remedy these problems and to create, a society that is just and equitable to everybody, and especially, the most vulnerable people among us. That's what we need to be focused on. How do you think, for example, one of the things I've been talking about and wanting to talk about more is how the UBI supports people to have a more equitable experience if they were to have to ever go to court for their children. Do you
Well,
think
I mean,
a UBI would have helped support you?
absolutely, because calling around trying to find, there's free legal help and it takes a long time to get it. You have to jump through a whole bunch of means testing and hoops, right? And because I'm a new resident, a lot of them say, I'm so sorry, you haven't been here long enough. We can't actually represent you. You know, so like very systemic structural barriers. And then, you know, private retainer, $2,000 to $5,000. Well, I right now I'm getting $312 a week of workman's comp. And if I weren't injured, I might be drawing some sort of pandemic unemployment, maybe, except for that Missouri still has my entitlement letter and I still have never received a dime for the weeks that I needed unemployment for. So whatever, I'm not going to count on that.
Yeah, I've always had a really hard time with like these shows that they used to do where they produce shows like Judge Judy, where they would put someone, quite judgmental, on the TV screen to let people know that it was your fault to go to court because you can't get along with your fellow human beings. And it really I can't believe that that's how we would treat people because sometimes it's not a fault. There's just, for example, in my family case, we have somebody in my family who was, I felt like we had a disability in our family that was masquerading as conflict, right? So in my court case, my ex-husband had Asperger's. And that presents significant social problems for some people, especially in dealing with.
My kid's
Yeah.
dad is also on the spectrum. And I
Oh,
think
really?
he's a
Oh,
little
wow.
bit even further on the spectrum than Asperger's, although Asperger's is a pretty accurate diagnosis kind of for the rest of him outside of some of his sensory. He has some very strong sensory problems that made our marriage very unhappy.
So these are things that we might have needed, better counseling, but we fell through the cracks because we were not. There are very few people who are trained in both some sort of, social impairment or things like that, plus couples counseling. Like those two are very different things, right? If you help someone with Asperger's and you're trained for that, you might be like, I'm going to help you with, how do you get a job? People at the work office. But couples counseling, but then that's a whole different, those two different beasts. There weren't enough people who could specialize in both and combine them into a good, healing therapy for people. So maybe what we needed was a better therapist. But we didn't have these available to us. There was no such person. And we also didn't have anybody going to come out and say, oh, people with Asperger's are not good parents. Wow. Can you imagine if you said that? Would you have any clients? But the fact is that neuro in dealing with their fathers or their mothers or somebody who may have social impairment. I mean, it's just obvious that there must be some sort of issues for the children. But the children are not usually, like if you're a neurotypical child, you're not usually, who is the specialist that you see, about this relational problem you have? And so it was very difficult to get anywhere for us. This type of support is just not available for all kinds of people. And once you enter into a family court system, a lot of people don't know that there is no lawyer. People think of court systems as the kind of things you see on TV with Matlock or something like that. Some sort of standard for evidence that's presented. But in family courts, there really isn't. What people operate on is the judges operate on what is called the best, what is it called?
Best interest of the child.
Best interests of the child, which could be anything.
The foster care system is the same way. There's no difference. One is kind of state intervention in family matters, and the other is family intervention in family matters. And they're both civil.
you have special like insight into the foster care as well, because you were on the other side of trying to run things for this and make sure that the children were well.
Yeah. And I have very few good things to say about the foster care system, other than there are many very well-intentioned people that get involved, and they're good people, and they try very hard. They work very hard for the families to try and reunify or keep the kids connected somehow through relatives, through kinship, through friends of the family, through the churches, all of that. Like, there are very good workers out there. That being said, the system itself is nothing but evil. It is designed to keep poor people poor and not able to really care for themselves outside of being cogs, manufacturing cogs for the production machine. And that's some brutal language I'm using, but to me, it's slavery. You're taking kids from their parents, their biological families. You're putting them with strangers, telling them they have no choice in it. And most often, no one ever bothers to counsel the kids that it's not your fault. And kids will automatically assume they did something wrong to be taken away from mommy and daddy. It doesn't matter how diseased mommy and daddy might actually be to them. That is their family, and that's where they belong. And instead of ripping families apart, how about we just give them a floor to stand on? Oh no, we can't give these poor people money. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to use it on drugs. See where we found them? And I'm like, but you put them there. That's the reality. You put them there. Why don't you make programs that work instead of relying on something that's broken? Oh, I get it. It's because what's broken is what fuels your diseased machine.
It is kind of an industry. I mean, there's a lot of people who need to have this job and gets paid per child, per, event.
Profiting off of human misery is an abomination. Like, fuck your identity politics. The abomination is profiting off of human misery. And we have a whole culture and a whole country and a whole fucking world's turning this way. We have this huge machine that's running us now. But this pandemic was an opportunity to take it back. And what are we doing? We're just letting the machine run us over. So I don't know what comes next. Like, I don't expect my court hearing to go well on Tuesday. I'm going to ask respectfully that Indiana either dismiss it or set a continuance until we are heard in the courts in Missouri about this conflict we're having. And I'm participating in the plan. I'm just not handing my children over to somebody who hurts them. And that's all I need to say. That's all I want to say. That's all that matters to me. But I need to have representation to actually be able to say that, not get thrown out of the court.
So, and you're not being offered a lawyer. This is another thing, that most people don't realize. In most states, you do not get a lawyer assigned to you when you go to court for your child, in terms of just a civil case of, between a man and a woman. And that's the most horrible thing to me, is that nobody would touch my case with a 10-foot pole. If you were in civil rights, or if you were in homeschooling, attorney fight for you if you were homeschooling and not. I went to all sorts of civil rights groups, and they would not touch my case because it's between a woman and a man. If it's a court case between a man and a woman, then anything can go. So they don't have any chance of really prevailing, and we don't even know. These are the professionals who do civil rights. It's not that they don't want to help you. They see that you're going to be struggling and your family is suffering, but there's nothing they can do because they have it's not actually legally sound. There's nothing they can actually grab onto and say the judge is doing wrong. The judge has complete and utter control over the situation because they can say anything, and there's nothing to, unless you
Well,
were
and
maybe the ADA.
one of
You
the
might,
problems
yeah.
that I'm facing right now is that because we have a broken postal system, because we had a former president intentionally break it, okay, I have been unable to have a piece of priority mail delivered to my kid's dad to tell him we moved. I sent it on January 29th, and it's still sitting in a post office somewhere.
Wow.
So I need to answer for that in court this week. And my answer is, here's the confirmation slip. Here's the open reports that I made with the Postal Service. I now have opened it twice. Here's the most recent communication to the person who received my mail locally in Kansas City, because I wanted to cut down on the chance of my return receipt or return to sender, right? Of it had less far to travel if I kept it in the metro area. So I have pictures where it was returned to sender at that local address and a copy of the instructions I gave him to send it back to the post office for confirmed delivery on a piece of certified priority mail.
And even that, you're not sure. You're just uncertain if it's accepted as being sufficient proof of you having done what your due diligence.
That's
and
crazy.
this is where it's like I don't know what else to do, and I am scared about walking in without an attorney. There are some judges. I hope this isn't one of them. It appears to be a woman based on the name. Not trying to make a stereotype, but feminine name. I hope she's a lady judge. They tend to be a lot more patient with unrepresented litigants, but not all of them. Some of them have no patience for that.
That's because Kai can see me shaking my head in the screen because I had pretty bad
the judge
experiences.
that issued our
with my
decree
judges.
is one of those. She follows the letter of the law, and she does not fuck around. She is not a friendly woman. And the last time we were in her courtroom, she kind of made it clear that she never wanted to see us there again.
But
Wow.
why would they? You're only giving her job. I mean, they should treat you like the client because you are providing them with cases. But they don't.
Right.
They seem to be angry at the fact that it's just crazy.
Well,
Like,
but family courts are vile. They're disgusting. And if you ever had a good opinion about human beings, you will not have it after working 1 year in that system, let alone the 17, 27, 30 years some of these judges, commissioners, because they're not really judges, and they're not even in Indiana are they called judges. They're called, I don't know, something else.
yeah, well, I
Missouri,
find it
it's a commissioner.
interesting. Yeah, I find it interesting that in the United States, many judges are elected to their office by
Yeah.
a popular vote, and it doesn't have anything to do with their record, something they're learning. They don't need to, prove anything in order to become judges. They just need to sometimes have the right name that made people want to, because how much do you know about the judges in the elections? All you see is their name. You don't know anything about them. So what are you really electing on and voting
in
on?
Missouri, it's simply an affirmation of shall this person retain that position. And I have always categorically, unless I know a judge personally or a commissioner personally, have always voted no, do not retain. Because
Wow.
the answer is they are almost always retained. And how else do you get movement to happen? So I
Yes.
figure a default no vote isn't hurting anything, but it might tip the scales on somebody who's really not deserving of retention.
Well, giving more people chances to become judges might actually, I mean, even just getting new people in with their whatever the new ideas are, Just that seems to be a type of progress, and not having the older people continue to make the same decisions over and over again.
Well, it's
Um,
the courts, the court system, all of it. It's a good old boys club. They have now allowed many women to come in and play, but you got to play by their rules, and they're good old boy rules. And it can be very degrading for many women that are in that system. Um,
well, I have
and
had
we heard that in the Clarence Thomas trials 20, 30 years ago.
probably the best judge that I've had, and I've had many now. Period of, I started my divorce 2009, I think, and there's been so many different cases, of different things that we had to go back to court for. So I've seen many, many different judges, and probably the only judge that I felt had really seen me as a person and really understood me was the federal judge. And I was really amazed that this, older white man turned out to be the best judge that I had ever had. So, um, you know, I don't I don't I'm not saying that there's that we should all elect an older white man or something like that. I'm just saying that sometimes, hoping that the people feel like when we go to the poll and they give us these choices of who would you like to be judge, and then you vote them in, they are affecting so many lives on a very personal and intimate basis, and they're like sometimes the wrong decisions can make such painful outcomes for families. But the way that we put them into office is like people are looking at the paper like, well, let's see, I think this is a woman, and I think this is a like you're just guessing based on all, you don't even know anything about, how do you find out about them? Do they the backstory of any of these judges? What types of decisions would they make? We don't get to do those. It's not like a Supreme Court hearing where, you actually hear about their resumes. And so the way that we currently elect judges just really is playing with people's lives. We
Well,
don't have any.
I mean,
Yeah.
then it's all a matter of political influence. And so the people that end up being slated are the people that have connections and influence and some sort of political sway or connection. And that's not really in keeping with our principles as a nation to do that. Um,
Mhm.
and it's something that we don't talk about when we're doing our get out the vote drives, because we're talking a lot about the legislators, the people who are writing the laws. We don't talk about the people who are there to decide about the law. And what kinds of metrics would we use to know if a judge is good or bad if they've never heard a case? If they're coming out, maybe it's a prosecutor, maybe it's a defender, a public defender. I mean, they exist for criminal cases, but not for family law cases. So how would you know if somebody's a good family advocate? Like,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
none of it makes any sense except for the ideas, and it does come from that historical materialist perspective that Marx and Engels wrote quite a nice little book about, that this goes all the way back. It's been going on for a long time. It follows a specific pattern, and we're in the middle of it. And on the other side are things we haven't tried yet. And
So I wanted to
we're
just say hi
there.
to
It's
Lucas.
happening by
Oh,
default.
hi Lucas. You jumped in the middle of we were very sort of involved with each other, me and Kai, so we hadn't said hi to you, but
No, it's okay.
yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're talking a little bit about something very personal for Kai because she's this coming Tuesday, correct?
Yeah, you cut out there.
Oh,
She's a
are
what?
you going to? She's going through a very personal ordeal because there's something happening in court on Tuesday, and
So
the fear.
I've been sued, and so he's
Mhm.
asking that Indiana accept the parenting plan from Missouri and enforce it. And then it also looks as if the request for protection heard at they've now combined those two. And probably what's going to happen that happened in Missouri, which is that they're going to dismiss both actions in Indiana and or dismiss my request for protection for me and the kid, and then adopt that parenting plan, and theoretically can force me under law, under threat of going to jail, to hand my kids over to their abuser.
Oh, that's
And
so messed up.
this is something that's happening in Missouri to a nauseating extent. There was an undercover article like at the top of the month, week of the month, the week of my birthday. So it was like the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd, and 2nd. The series of articles published about the judges in St. Louis County and a whole bunch of guardian ad litems that captured on a Zoom call conspiring to sap their clients of money.
Yeah, these are the things that the good people of the world find it hard to believe. And yet, but we can present evidence. These things really do happen. And trusting the system to take care of families in an adversarial system, built to be adversarial. You have literally on the forms, this person versus another person who have had children together and who were supposed to the day that they died. So it's like versus, where do you even go in the middle? Because it's a system designed to create adversaries out of people who really just want to love each other and just, be able to move on with their lives. And so it's a horrendous system to go through. And I'm so sorry that you're, because that is definitely a make or break situation. And I'm really terrified for you and your children. What I think, I'm not a lawyer, of course, but based on my own experience of what's happening right now is you're trying to seek a new jurisdiction for the things that have been happening to you because you do not feel safe in the old place. And also, you need a more adequate protection by having that distance from a legal system that has been abusing you and your children and allowing your abuse to get away with it. So what you're really asking for, you're asking for the new court system to accept your change of, and to accept you guys as belonging in a safe place and having the right to become a refugee within the United States. It's like you cannot access legal justice where you were because you have tried and it did not work. And so this is the evidence you're going to be presenting yourself, pro se, which is just absolutely terrifying for someone who does not have the energy to even look up all of these, looking up cases to being your own lawyer is exhausting. You don't have years of legal ground training. You don't have experience. You don't have relationships.
No, my only experience with the court system really is being on the adversary's side, yet as the social worker, the only advocate for a family or a set of kids in an adversarial system, right? So that's my experience, is how do you advocate when you're the bad guy?
Yeah, you're being, and so of course the judges don't, they're like,
I'm still in the same position I was as a foster care social worker. I'm just on the other side of the coin. How do I advocate for my kids when I am the bad guy?
But you're not going to know how to play all the legal games that lawyers by having played the game. They literally, they have to learn it one at a time. Oh, I have to, do this for other legal, and you don't have the ability to learn that on the fly fast enough to guarantee yourself the best representation. And so I hope that maybe you can try to get funding, or some other. Oh, we lost her.
She dropped out. I don't know.
Oh,
She's
no.
coming back.
Okay, she's back now.
Sorry.
Well, and no, we were just concerned because we do hope that you can fundraise or somehow manage to get yourself a lawyer on your side very soon. And this is too late maybe for Tuesday. So we're just, we're all going to be hoping and praying for you.
I got served yesterday with the notice of court appearance. And I'd been watching the case on the Indiana courts system page. it
Mhm.
doesn't actually show when our hearing is. So
Mm.
so again, it's like, well, I talked to some people, and retainers are $2,000 to $5,000.
Now, see,
Good to
if you
go.
are, yeah, if you're the lawyer, you can easily file. I'm on vacation this. Can we do this next week? This is what lawyers and judges do. Judges in dispute, you know, then everybody, no foul. And
Well,
the
you cut
same
out
thing with
there.
Hey.
lawyers.
We didn't hear you.
You're
Oh, I'm
having a
sorry.
lot of problems with your mic, I think.
Yeah,
again.
just stay still. Find one position that works, and just like keep talking to the microphone. Microphone discipline. Yeah.
But I mean, I get agitated when we're talking about
No, I
things
understand.
because
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's so
no, I do
personal.
too.
And
It's so painful, and I'm glad that, thank you for sharing your story.
well,
Which
I mean, I've had a little bit of experience in which I got to learn some of the things that will happen to you. And you may even have more experience than I do, but I feel like we need to say these things out loud for our listeners too. Because there may be a lot of
So-
people who are just at
right. This is what I have done, which is a friend of mine is willing to pay my retainer. So I've reached out to one of the two attorneys that I've talked to locally that kind of did the sigh and, well, it's complicated. It's going to be expensive, and you're not going to win, or you might not win. The chances are not good. But what's in my benefit is that I had a temporary order of protection, and then I didn't go to the court date, so it got dismissed. And that escalated his pattern to the point that he then came to pick the kids up on his parenting day on Thursday and sat in front of our house for 5 hours, waiting for me to change my mind.
But, he may have been
And then,
instructed by his lawyer to do that. Because if he doesn't try to exercise a single parental moment that he's supposedly entitled to, then he can lose them also. So it's sort of
while
yeah.
he was there,
Mhm.
he had police come twice.
Mm.
So there's like, and that's one of his favorite ways to abuse me. And this is where I have like 27 police reports of interactions where police came to our home or to my work because he called them to say, there's something wrong with her.
This
Because
is the
I was
legal
losing
abuse.
my mind from being trapped in this abusive situation where I could only, when we were married, after I left my teaching job, which was a great job, other than the schedule was killing me while I was pregnant, it was a thing. Like, it wasn't the smartest choice I ever made to quit that job, but it is what it is. But I had another job, worked weekends. So since I got married to him, I've only earned over about $6,000 in 2 of these last 10 years.
So this is both financial and legal abuse. And the thing that people really don't understand about legal abuse is just pure power structure play. You just don't have as much bandwidth as I do to handle these situations. And I can call the police on you and they will respond to me for no reason. And I can, there are all things that to continue supporting someone that they don't seem to ever, figure out how to punish him. Like when he repeatedly and they see that every time he calls them, there's nothing actually that they need to handle. They should give him a warning and say, hey, don't call us because, if you call us again, we're going to charge you for this visit. We're going to come out. Right. But that doesn't happen. And so then,
Nope.
next time he's like, I'm going to use, it was free. I can call them again.
The one cop that came out twice was so irritated. He's like, we can't keep coming out like this. You're going to get a ticket. I'm threatened with the ticket. And I'm like,
not him, for calling the police unnecessarily. That's awful.
because I moved without permission from my ex-husband? Are you insane?
Mhm.
Like, ultimately, that's what it is. I have been deemed basically his ward, essentially, because I have his children half the time for the rest of my life. And that meant living in absolute squalor while I was recovering from one of the worst injuries a human can have on their body. Literally. Like, it's insane to me that anybody can think that my decision to come be housed in a real house close to my biological family, who I haven't been able to be around because I've been stuck in Missouri for a decade. And that's the truth. Don't tell me I can't be with my family, who are all very good people. And actually, some of the people I'm related to are namesakes in the state of Indiana. Like, they're people that influence the development of the state and are essential components of our state's history. Not that any of that necessarily belongs to me, except for that we're part of the only surviving relatives of these people who did good things for this state. So I don't think it's inappropriate for me to ask the land of my dad's birth to please take me and protect me from somebody who hurts me and hurts my kids.
Well,
More
I'm
importantly,
100% for
somebody
you.
who hurts my kids shouldn't be allowed to hurt my kids. I don't care who he is. So
Yes.
I'm going to be signing some papers with my cousin. She's going to
Mhm.
have them while I'm in court. And if I'm ordered to hand them over, I will politely ask them that they will escort me to the jail cell, and I will sit there until we get this fixed.
Well, I hope that our listeners are able to find you even past this court date, and maybe the court date will be moved away. You know, you can try to move the court date until you are better prepared to fight whatever's about to happen to you. You know, take a page from the lawyers and the judges that do this all the time. Whenever they don't feel like taking a case yet, they'll just do it later. So I hope that people can find a way to connect with you. I think we're going to need to say goodbye soon because we've come to the end of
It's
our
about 4
scheduled time
o'clock.
together.
Yeah. Kaizen, thank
Oh,
you. I'm really glad we got to capture your current state and story and let you speak your mind. And
it's so ugly, man.
I'm glad we
I
got
just,
this now, in case the worst does happen and you go away for a bit. I'm
well,
glad your
yeah,
story's
at
gonna be out
least
there.
then
So
you'll know that I'll be sitting in Marion County Jail
yes, exactly. So I'm glad
on
that's
principle.
right. I'm glad you got to
So,
explain.
Please leave us a way to, keep in touch with you and your family and be able to, wish you well and be able to find ways to help you in case, things continue spiraling.
I'll give my outro.
Okay.
So I can be found on Twitter, Patreon, PayPal, and Cash App. The handle is at KAIZENKC. That's Kaizen. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. Recently moved to Indianapolis, Indiana with my two lovely children, my two little girls, who are on spring break. And so we're going to have fun over spring break, assuming that I can get the court here in Indiana to hear me out, or give me a little bit more time to secure proper legal counsel, or to be able to successfully represent myself in the court.
Yeah. Successful self-representation is, so I hope we can collect enough money to help get Kai, someone who's on her side and will be her advocate in court, because everybody deserves legal representation. And we know that.
It's so
We know
abhorrent
that when
that
we
this is a
tried
thing
a
that we
criminal
have to raise
case.
money for.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's abhorrent that this is a thing that you privately you must raise money for as a severely impoverished person. Who's supposed to give you money for legal representation? There's no one. This country doesn't work. It's broken. So I'm so tired.
These are
of
the
everything.
things. These are the things that have been happening to, American citizens. We have become jaded.
Yeah.
separated from their parents. People were like, so, happens to Americans all the time. They're not connecting to the brutality and the horror, um, by the legal system when there really is no need. There is absolutely no need for that to happen. So anyway, uh, shall we say goodbye to everybody? Lucas, do you want to say anything before we close the stream?
Oh, yeah, I just want to say one thing. Kai, I might be able to help you out because my uncle, sadly, he passed away last year, but my cousin and him knew a lot of people out west because he used to work for the United Nations. So he might know some people out west because he knew some people in like the Connecticut, New York area
That
that
would be
might be able to
awesome.
help you out.
That
Yeah.
would be awesome. Thank you.
Just reach out to me here on the Discord channel.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Is there any way you would like people to contact you if anybody wanted to talk to Lucas after the show?
Oh, you mean my contact stuff?
Yeah. Do you want to
Oh.
give your? Mhm.
Yes, 203 is my phone number, 824-9006.
That's okay. Just give your
Totally
phone.
up to you.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine,
I
I
guess
don't
some
mind.
people are cool giving the phone out. As that.
I-
There it is.
Yeah, I
That's-
mean, the phone
that's
number feels a little dangerous in the modern day.
Yeah.
It's an
Maybe
identifier
it's not. Who knows?
for other types of accounts.
Mhm.
But for me, my phone number is also pretty. I use it. I find it easy to change my number if
Yeah.
Worst comes to worst, yeah.
and in the meantime,
You cut out there. I can't hear you.
again, I'm talking about my two older children. I never help in doing a letter writing campaign to be able to talk to them, even if it's just by writing, by writing old fashioned letters, that's fine. But I haven't received a letter from my children or any news since 2017, which is just heartbreaking for me. And I'm probably gonna ask for that please soon. So anyway, you can find me on Twitter at Palestine Math, PalestineMath for Make America Think Harder. And you can find me on Facebook as myself. So, okay, Shale.
Thank you for listening, watching, participating in the discussion. My name is Shale. My Twitter is Shale Riley. ShaelRiley. Thank you again. We will be back next weekend with more basic income advocacy. And yes. All right, heavy stuff. All right. Goodbye.
And of course,
everybody.
we lost refluence by the end of the stream. All right.